Most games these days comes with a list of trophies or achievements for you to obtain when going for 100% completion. However, in this respect, not all games are made equal. Some are designed to be a calm, relaxing and overall enjoyable experience. And others? Well, they're not. What's happening, guys? Today we're going to be looking at 10 of the most infuriating trophies to obtain in the Final Fantasy series. Trophies were introduced to the PlayStation ecosystem back in 2008, serving as a means of rewarding you for progressing through the story or completing challenges in a game. The hardest to obtain typically being the coveted Platinum Trophy. You would receive this for acquiring all prior trophies the game has to offer. The first game to feature these trophies was Super Stardust HD, which contains 17 trophies in total, split into Bronze, Silver and Gold categories. The first game to include a Platinum Trophy was Naughty Dog's Uncharted Drake's Fortune. From 2009, it became a mandatory feature for PlayStation games that were submitted for certification to include a fully fledged list of trophies for the player to obtain. First Final Fantasy title to include these trophies was the 2009 release of Final Fantasy XIII. These trophies were obtained by progressing through the story, defeating optional bosses, and completing various other challenges within the game. So without further ado, let's drop into our top 10. Starting this list off at number 10, we have ffXIII Master from Final Fantasy X. It's no surprise that some of the trophies that are earned the least are the completionist trophies. Each game has them to some degree, and Final Fantasy X is no exception. This installment in the series introduced a sphere grid as a means of strengthening your party, teaching them new abilities, and otherwise levelling up or increasing various stats. Now, where Final Fantasy X differs from other similar titles and even later games in this series, is that rather than this tame looking skill tree you see from the most recent Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you had to complete this monstrosity. And not once, you had to complete it for every party member. While you will naturally accrue plenty of AP through battles, and there are ways of completing this more efficiently than just randomly working your way around the board, without consulting some form of detailed guide, this is almost certainly going to be a lengthy process, which may go some way to explaining the almost pitiful 2.9% of players managing to bag themselves this trophy. Moving on to number 9, we have Sweet Perfection from Final Fantasy X-2. The sequel to Final Fantasy X and the first direct sequel in the series, to obtain this trophy you would need to complete 100% of the main story. Now that doesn't sound too bad, does it? No super bosses to beat, no obscure collectibles. And while this part is true, it's far from a painless experience. 100% of the main story means not only completing each chapter, but make sure you speak to each NPC possible and complete all dialogue options within each chapter. This quite often means doubling back on yourself to speak to specific NPCs after you complete certain tasks. You'll also need to complete all tutorials available to you and complete all optional objectives in each chapter. In short, completing this on your first attempt without multiple scum saves or consulting a detailed guide is damn near impossible. And at the time of recording, only 4% of players have managed to obtain this trophy. Coming in at number 8, we have Virtually Renowned from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. To obtain this trophy, you'll need to complete all of Chadley's combat simulations. This doesn't sound too bad, however to actually unlock all the combat simulations you will need to complete the main scenario, complete all Proto-Relic side missions, defeat all the mini-bosses at the classified intel locations, and transmute the Corsair's Compass accessory, for which you will need to follow and complete the Pirate's Treasure side quest. Now you have the ability to complete the brutal legendary VR missions, so it should be simple enough. Most players will argue, however, that these missions are actually harder than completing the main scenario on hard mode. For these particular missions you are locked into hard mode, so there is no item usage, and in most cases you're locked into specific party selections or specific number of party members. For this reason, it's absolutely recommended that you have your party at max level, each party member is at level 70, your materia that you're using is at the max level, and you have as many manuscripts as possible to maximise your chances of beating these challenges. Even then, this clearly causes problems for most players, as only 1.6% of players have currently earned themselves this trophy. Next at number 7 we have Bloodlust from Final Fantasy IX. This trophy is probably one of the simplest to earn on this list in theory, as it just requires you to complete battles and defeat foes. A mere 10,000 of them. While in terms of difficulty this is almost certainly one of the most obtainable trophies on this list, the sheer amount of time it takes to grind the game and even encounter this number of enemies makes it one of the more grindy entries on the list. While the remaster does give you the option to speed up the battle timer and play the game in fast mode, this only somewhat decreases the time you're going to end up sinking into the game trying to get this particular trophy to pop, which almost certainly explains its mediocre 1.4% of players earned. Coming in at number 6 we have the Omega Destroyed trophy from Final Fantasy VIII. This is the first and only super boss trophy that will appear on this list. In almost all Final Fantasy titles, there is an optional super boss titled Ultimate Weapon. Quite often, defeating this boss will reward you with some sort of legendary weapon for one of your party. However, for its much more powerful counterpart in Final Fantasy VIII, this was not the case. In order to obtain Omega Destroy trophy, you would need to progress to near the end of the main game, where you'll find the optional boss in Ultimecia's castle. It boasts having over 1 million HP, deals devastating attacks such as Ultimate and Meteor, which means the potential to completely wipe your party if you're not fully prepared. This boss absorbs all elemental magic, limiting your options when it comes to strategies you can use to actually beat this monstrosity. Normally, this would place much higher in our list owing to its difficulty in the original game. However, as the trophy is attached to the remaster, which gave players the option of playing the game assisted, we can't justify placing it in the top 5, with a total of 11.4% of players having obtained this trophy. I do wonder, would this percentage be so high without the battle assist? Now moving into our top 5. At number 5, we have the Treasure Hunter trophy from Final Fantasy XIII. To obtain this trophy, you will need to have owned every single weapon and every single accessory in the game. This includes all separate tiers for each weapon, which means you will need to have at some point owned 102 weapons and 119 accessories. While you don't need to physically have them equipped, all items you will need to have had them in your inventory for the trophy to pop. This can be particularly frustrating because in order to upgrade your equipment you will need certain items to upgrade them in the first place. So selling weapons or accessories before upgrading them or dismantling them will actually prevent you from earning this trophy, which may go some way to explaining why only 7.7% of players have actually managed to obtain it. Coming in at number 4, we have Chocobo Master from Final Fantasy X. For this particular trophy, you will need to have advanced far enough into the story to be able to ride chocobos. At this point, you'll be able to participate in a race against another chocobo rider at the Remiem Temple. What makes this particular trophy such a nightmare is not only do you need to win the race against the other rider, you will also need to collect 5 chests which are scattered along the course as you go. There appears to be a time window that the other rider will finish the race, which makes things more difficult to track. This appears to be somewhere between 32 and 38 seconds. What's more damning is that if the opponent does finish in the 32 seconds, you physically cannot win the race and collect all the chests, so multiple attempts with trial and error will likely be required. Owing to the fact the game was originally released on the 2001 on the PlayStation 2, the controls also take some time to adjust to as they can be a little bit janky at times, which may explain the somewhat mediocre 5.9% of players managing to bag themselves this trophy. Next at number 3, we have Living Off the Land 4 from Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO based in the Final Fantasy universe, and as such there is a multitude of quests for you to complete, dungeons for you to raid, and other activities. As this launched on consoles as well as PC, trophy support was also included in the PlayStation version of the game. And the trophies are all as grindy as one would expect from an MMO. While there are many trophies in this game that we could include in this list, the one we've gone with was of course Living Off the Land 4, which requires you to gather 8,000 collectibles. Obviously this is one of the most time consuming trophies in any Final Fantasy game to date, and with only 0.3% of players earning the trophy as of recording, for this reason earns a place on our list. It was somewhat difficult to place these last 2 trophies due to their similarities in how you obtain them, however when looking at the percentage of players to earn each, it's quite clear which of the 2 comes out on top. So at number 2, we have Lightning Dancer from Final Fantasy X. While you're passing through the Thunder Plains, you'll notice that lightning seems to randomly strike at you. When the screen flashes, you can dodge these lightning strikes by pressing the action button at the correct moment. Now that's simple enough, it will just be a case of repeating this multiple times and the trophy should pop. While this is true, in order to gain this trophy and the in-game reward for this, you will need to dodge lightning strikes 200 times, consecutively. Now the timing isn't necessarily the main issue as this trophy, as it's pretty clear when you need to press the action button. It's the infrequency of the lightning strikes, however, that makes maintaining focus more of an issue. Especially if you don't have any purifying salts or piece of equipment that have the no encounters ability, as you will also have to deal with random enemy encounters, which can skew timings. What's more frustrating is that the in-game item you receive is necessary for Lulu's ultimate weapon, so realistically, if you're going to be using Lulu in your main party throughout the game, especially in the end game, this is something you're going to want to complete. All that being said, unlike some other entries on this list, it's impressive to note that this hasn't necessarily been as much of an issue for a lot of players, with 6.7% of players earning themselves this trophy. Finally, coming in at number 1, there can only be one in my mind that takes this spot. Hail to the King from Final Fantasy IX. Perhaps the most excruciatingly annoying trophy of any game I've ever played. To obtain this trophy you will need to jump rope 1,000 times without tripping. In some respects this is similar to the previous trophy in that it requires precise timings, however unlike the previous entry which was somewhat random, the pattern changes incrementally, making this all the more difficult. Jump rope is available at 2 points in the game, in Alexandria's Square where you're playing as Vivi early on in the game, and much later in the steeple. In order to complete this you will need to press the action button every time the icon appears above Vivi's head, prompting you to jump. Now there are scripts you can use while using remote play in order to get this trophy, however through legitimate means, this trophy is by far, if not, the most difficult trophy to obtain in any game I've ever played to date, and is probably the only trophy that's physically made me want to quit the game due to sheer frustration. The only solace I will take from it is knowing that even with scripting, only 1.8% of players have managed to bag themselves this trophy. And that's our list of 10 insanely difficult trophies to obtain in the Final Fantasy series. What are some of your most frustrating trophies, achievements or moments? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like, and if you aren't already subscribed, now's a great time to do so. You'll be notified when future videos are released, and as always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.